Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Justice League versus the Fatal Five? Stick around and find out. Shaka down, shaka down, jugga down, bear da down, jugga down, banga down, shaka down, bang out, bang out, all right, I could go on. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my uncut review of Justice League versus the Fatal Five. The synopsis on IMDb puzzlingly reads: the Justice League battles the Fatal Five, Tharok, Emerald Empress, Validus, Mano, and the Persuader, based on the characters created by Jim Shooter. That's it. There's probably a better synopsis that someone else put out, but that is, man. So you got Starboy. He's a member of the Legion of Superheroes in the far-flung future, and he ends up having to chase some villains back into the past, into present-day times, and he's chasing them down because they're trying to do some bad things in that time period. But Starboy suffers from schizophrenia, and his medication that's effective in helping him is only available in the 31st century. And so coming back to the 21st century, he's kind of hosed, and so he has trouble not only focusing and doing what he needs to do to find the bad guys, but like getting people to believe him. You know, they think he's insane because he's displaying these other symptoms of schizophrenia. You know, meanwhile, you've got a relatively new Green Lantern that has joined the Justice League in some kind of capacity when Jon Stewart presumably is not around. And before she became a Green Lantern, she had a horrible experience of watching some close friends of her be murdered. And it's in the scene in this movie, it's near the beginning. It's like, they don't show as much as they could, but sometimes it's what they don't show that just makes you cringe. And I was like, dang, this is freaking brutal. And so she's dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. And both of these two characters with mental disorders are really the focus of the story. And the themes of mental disorder are a prominent part of how things play out and where they go. Even in the climax, the issues of mental disorder are really front and center. And I was surprised and welcoming of, you know, them going for heavier issues. It's a little bit of a bandwagon, I want to say, kind of thing that, you know, in geek culture and in geek entertainment, mental illness, people being aware of mental illness has become more of a thing. And so at this point, this felt a little bit like, oh, this is, you know, I think their hearts were in the right place, but it just feels a little bit like, okay, we're just doing this thing now that people are caring about and stuff, you know. That said, it's a good bandwagon to jump on, you know, of the bandwagons that you could certainly choose. So yeah, I welcomed it, but I did have some questions about, like, is this really the best story, the best type of animated DC movie to try and explore these themes in? Basically, as far as how the script and the tone and the pacing, all that kind of stuff feels to me, it's like a Justice League Unlimited episode or series of 3 episodes maybe, with rough language and mature themes of mental illness. And, you know, you might think, well, that sounds cool, I like Justice League Unlimited, but that art style and some of the logic of the scripts of Justice League Unlimited would just leave holes in them, and normally I wouldn't notice those kinds of things because the tone of a Justice League Unlimited episode is light, you know, and you're not supposed to be like thinking about these things as you would if they were real. But when they bring in these issues of mental illness, when they roughen up the language to make it, you know, feel a little bit more gritty or grown up or whatever, you know, then there's some switch in my brain that starts to ask the questions of, yeah, okay, well, you've got these real mental illness issues that you're dealing with and trying to deal with, I think, in a responsible way. But like, you've got these story logic issues, and for some reason, my brain just didn't like having those inconsistencies there. There's lots of action, some lack of logic in the plot. Let's see here. There's a few good jokes, usually, at least for my humor, you know, which is no indication of what you're going to laugh at. Usually involving Batman, but kind of a Justice League Unlimited version of Batman. You know, like, there's one punchline I laughed out loud at, but I was like, Batman wouldn't say that. He wouldn't say that. It's a pop culture reference that he makes, and I'm like, Batman wouldn't say that, you know. But it was still funny in the moment. I accepted it as this Justice League Unlimited version of Batman, you know. Let's see here. There is a third character who has arguably some I don't know if I would say mental illness issues, but just some emotional health issues. Miss Martian, I think, is her name. I don't know where John Jones is, the Martian Manhunter, but she's the replacement, I guess, because she's female, and we got to check that box or something. I don't know that she's a more interesting character apart from maybe this insecurity issue, but I think you could tell really interesting. I think you could have told some really interesting emotional or mental health stories with John Jones, and so that felt, including her and ditching Martian Manhunter, felt a little, like a demographic box checking going on. But oh well, they did an okay story with her. I could have surgically removed her character from the story and just had a little bit more focus on Starboy and Jessica Cruz, the Green Lantern, and I think I would have enjoyed it more, though. I didn't think she added a ton. Plot-wise, she was needed. They needed a telepath in the story. Anyway, so yeah, she's got some insecurity issues she's working through. The Fatal Five are the big villains, and you're seeing three of them for most of the story, and these are lesser-known villains for the futuristic Legion of Superheroes DC comic book stories. And I wish that they had fleshed out the characters more in this story. I was familiar with their visual looks and with a couple of their names, but I really didn't know anything about their backstory, and they reveal almost nothing about their backstory and what drives them. It's clear that one of them is motivated romantically to rescue a fellow teammate that he's romantically involved with. That's as far as I think they got in any kind of motives for these villains, and I really like to know the motives of the villains to help me engage with the story more. Let's see here. Although the language and the themes were mature, like I said, in other ways it really had a Saturday morning vibe. I think in general, I was trying to think of who's this audience, who's the audience for this? Who are they targeting? And it feels like a nostalgia play for fans of Justice League Unlimited, but at the same time they're recognizing those fans are probably grown up a little bit more, and they might welcome some rougher language and some more grown-up themes. And so I can appreciate that, but at the same time, we live in this age where media of the past is like just kind of frozen in time and always available now. And so like there could be new kids that are being exposed to the Justice League animated series that might be really enjoying that, or maybe they just finished watching that. And then there's this thing that's playing to fans of Justice League Unlimited, but the language content and the thematic content is just not the right fit for the same audience as those Justice League Unlimited, shows. If you're, so it was an interesting choice, and the blend didn't quite work for me. I was unable to invest in a lot of the story just because of those two elements trying to work together. For other people, it might not be an issue, but for me, it was. As far as the cast goes, it's the returning voices that you would expect from a Bruce Timm animated TV show era, and they all do a fine job, including the new cast members as well. The visual style, I want to talk about that a little bit because it affects the mood, I think, the tone of the whole thing. It would be unfair to say that the animation quality is old TV caliber, I think. When I saw the trailer for this, I was like, oh man, this looks exactly like a Justice League Unlimited episode, and they want me to pay a premium price to buy this movie, or to rent it or whatever, when I used to watch those for free, on TV, and they used to produce them on a weekly basis. This is something that they spent a lot of time producing, and they're putting out now, and they're asking for, a significant amount of money for. So I was like, that's why I didn't, I waited. I just waited till it was cheap on Redbox. I did not buy it the day it came out, and I would still stand by that, but I would say, because I think that the visual style is a little too dated and lower, quote unquote, lower quality for me. Again, it's an aesthetic choice they're purposefully making. But the animation is actually better, I think, than the Justice League Unlimited era. It's a little bit smoother, and they have visual effects that are a little bit more advanced than that time period. It's just that the designs of the characters are still kind of simple or bland, if you will, And there are also a few moments that I wish they would have added perspective blur, where you blur one character to create an artificial camera focus so that we can get a sense of like who is in the foreground and who is in the background. There was one moment where these heroes all came into a scene, and the order in which they appeared and the layout of them on screen, the first one was Miss Martian, and I knew she's like supposed to be a shapeshifter, I think. Well, maybe she can't. I don't know if I saw her shapeshift once in this movie. Anyway, I was like, is she supposed to be giant size right now? Wait a minute. Oh, wait, is Wonder Woman a giant? And I was like, oh, no, no. Okay, this is just a perspective issue. I'm not seeing the way they want me to see it. So that would have been nice to have a little bit of that artificial camera blur, in there. But yeah, the visual style clearly seems to be a nostalgia play for Justice League Unlimited fandom. Felt like a weird blend, though. I would have preferred that we had this story with these themes with better logic and a more advanced-looking art style. As far as the music and sound go, I don't always comment on music. I will this time around, though. It sounds like Justice League Unlimited. When they changed from the Justice League animated series to Justice League Unlimited, they really moved into, with the score, a very electric guitar-driven sound. Distorted electric guitar, And so, like, the themes that once sounded triumphant and they would be horns playing, were, like, suddenly rockified, And I didn't like that transition when I was watching the animated series. It felt like, as I'm sure it was, a play to younger audiences and trying to rock it up and give it more action, make it feel more action-y and stuff and younger and cool and whatever. I didn't like it. It took away some of the class that I thought that the score had. And so I didn't appreciate that here because I don't have nostalgia for that. I think it's a nostalgia play. I don't think that if they were coming to this fresh with a different art style and stuff like that, they would have chosen that rock, sounding style. It was a callback to Justice League Unlimited. And so I think if you have nostalgia for specifically that era of the Justice League animated series, then it's probably going to work for you. I don't, so it didn't work for me. As far as themes, are there any worthwhile moral, philosophical, or spiritual themes being explored that might stimulate some worthwhile thought or heart examination or conversation of any kind? The mental illness issue, I think, is definitely something that could come out of seeing this movie and contemplating that, thinking about that. Jessica Cruz, the Green Lantern in this story, as I said, is dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder. She is seeing a psychologist near the beginning of the story who had given her a mantra that she was supposed to tell herself. And you even see a scene where she's telling herself, I'm getting better every day. And it's like this positive self-talk, and it wasn't working for her. She was like, yeah, right, this is, a load of crap, And she told that to the psychiatrist, it's not working for me, I just need drugs or something, And the psychologist, I think I said psychiatrist, sorry. I'm assuming it's a psychologist because she wasn't prescribing medication. So the psychologist told her she needs to create her own mantra then, one that works for her, and we see that play out later in the story. And it ultimately, without giving spoilers, plays out as arguably a sort of self-empowerment moment at the end. And while self-affirmation can be valuable, any affirmations should first and foremost be based on truth, not just like things that we try to trick ourselves into believing. And in the case of Christians, we have some incredible truths revealed in Scripture that should not be neglected when seeking to improve our mental health or our perspective on life. In Jessica's case, her mantra in the end was based on a truth, but it was very convenient. It was a convenient sci-fi based truth that the writers could just decide is true for her, And so I think taking inspiration from that as an audience member and trying to apply that to one's own problems might be inappropriate, her mental health problems are ultimately overcome, kind of conveniently to serve a dramatic purpose in the story, but real mental illness is not near so agreeable. So it brings as I said, it brings attention to these mental illness issues, but I'm not sure that it deals with them in as realistic a way as it could. It oversimplifies them at the same time that it draws attention to them, even making them the object of humor in the case of Starboy. Starboy has schizophrenia, and sometimes his behavior, makes him look a little bit silly and is clearly played for comedy, And so I kind of like, that's an interesting choice, He is, as far as his treatment, he's being treated with medication rather than behavioral therapy. So I did appreciate that a spectrum of treatment for mental illness is represented. I think that's good. I think leaning on any one approach alone and just saying, no, I'm not going to do behavioral therapy, I'm not going to allow for the possibility of medication, I think ruling those things out is unwise. And at the same time, as a Christian, I would say leaning solely on the remembrance of and trust in scriptural truth claims may not be enough. You may need some behavioral therapy of some kind, or you may need medication of some kind. So I appreciated that they were representing at least some spectrum in treating mental health concerns, and and I think limiting ourselves is just a disservice to our own efforts to become healthy. There's also a great theme that I almost missed that didn't become clear to me until the end. And again, I won't give spoilers. And that theme is the feeling of being misunderstood and overlooked because of personality traits that you have that affect others negatively. This applies not just to those with mental illness, I think, but a wide variety of us geeks who often feel misunderstood and overlooked and underappreciated. We think, I'm valuable. Why can't people see that? And this movie provides both an example of compassion for someone in that situation and also a cathartic reckoning for the same character later on that just really felt good to me as I watched it. I was very moved by. After feeling disconnected with much of the movie, I was surprised at how engaged and emotionally moved I was by this moment near the end. That said, I have no idea what your preferences and tastes are in movies, so if I were a time traveler, I'd go back in time and say, Peter, rent it cheap, or wait for like a free streaming service to have it, or maybe a service that you're already paying for monthly. It's Justice League Unlimited with added grown-up themes, at least attempts, and some successes there. It's a mixed bag. And, rough language, I guess, just to be cool and edgy. You won't want to buy it, but, at least not for more than a few bucks. Maybe a bargain bin sometime. You can get it for $3 to $5. And you'll be fine just watching this once. It's rated PG-13 for sequences of sci-fi violence, some bloody images, language, and partial nudity. And if you're curious, it's kind of like a Kyle Reese time traveler type moment, where Starboy's butt crack can be just seen a little bit from, one angle. It's it's Justice League Unlimited style, line drawing, and so it's not like it looks like this really realistic butt, So anyway, there you go. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please do like or share or subscribe. Anything you want to do to stay connected to this content and share it with others, I'd be really grateful for. And then I hope you'll join us over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We've got a ton going on here at Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central, including our in-depth Bible study for geeks, movie, game, and other entertainment reviews or commentary, live streams, Christian geek news, original audio dramas, and tons more. And on top of all that, you can become a Spirit Blade insider with an influential voice and get access to exclusive content and rewards. It's your involvement as a patron that will keep all of this going and growing. So I want to thank you for your consideration in that. For more information, please check out our Patreon page through the link below at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Thanks for listening.